So hey guys, welcome back to another video here on the channel. Today behind me I have two very popular three-row family SUVs that are currently for sale on the market. And that is the 2024 Hyundai Palisade Calligraphy in its new night edition, as well as the all-new 2024 Mazda CX-90 in its Turbo S Premium Plus trim, which is fully loaded as well. So in this video, we're gonna just do a side-by-side comparison, see what some of these similarities, some of the differences are, both on the interior, exterior features, everything as far as that goes. And then also go over some of the differences in terms of the drivetrain, because that is gonna be another key difference between the two platforms and engine types inside of these vehicles. And then finally go over my opinions in terms of which one might be the better value or the better option to go with, depending on what your needs and preferences are in a vehicle like this. So without further ado, let's not waste any more time and get right into it. Now when it comes to the exterior design of each of these two, both the vehicles will feature their own respective design language from each of these two companies, but will also differ due to the platform architecture each of these is based upon. So for example, the Mazda is a rear-wheel drive based platform, meaning the vehicle is primarily powered through the rear wheels, and the Palisade is primarily going to be front-wheel drive, although both of these will come in all-wheel drive versions, but those are going to be the main two differences in terms of where the power is sent. Now the Mazda also has a longer hood due to the longitudinal engine layout versus the Palisade's transversely mounted engine, and this goes on to affect the seating position and how some of the interior and overall body structure is laid out, which we'll touch on a little bit later. So because of this overall design language and difference between these two, the Mazda certainly has more of a wagon design, which some may or may not like a little bit more versus the Palisade, which has a traditional kind of front-wheel drive based SUV look to it. But overall, I think both these two vehicles are extremely attractive designs. Now out back and on the sides of the two vehicles, much of the same continues from the front with LED tail lamps, parking sensors, cameras that surround the entire exterior of the vehicle, and I will say I really do like the Palisade's exposed exhaust tips on the passenger side, whereas the Mazda's exhaust tips are unfortunately hidden underneath the bumper, even though they did do a fairly good job mimicking exhaust tips with the chrome accents at the bottom. But overall, I think Mazda's CX-90 looks fantastic, and Hyundai did an excellent job refreshing the Palisade for 2023. So now let's go ahead and sit in all three rows of each of these two vehicles and see what my overall thoughts and impressions are going from one to the other, and also cover a few of the similarities as well as the differences. So starting out here in the driver's seat of the CX-90, as this is the one I've been driving for the last 5 days or so. The interior of the CX-90 here in the top fully loaded trim level is, dare I say, pretty much luxury car levels. You have Nappa leather as well as suede inserts on the door panels, the dash, as well as the inserts for the seats, which are actually fairly similar to that Calligraphy Night Edition over there for 2024. But the layout between the two is actually going to be the biggest difference from what I've noticed sitting here in the CX-90. Now the steering wheel is pretty much, identical as far as, you have your audio multimedia controls as well as your cruise and safety systems. So that's really not going to be all that different. This does have a power tilt telescopic steering column, which really should be on the Palisade in my opinion, at least in the Calligraphy trim, but that is unfortunately not the case for 2024. Memory seats and some of your other safety systems are here to the left of the dashboard. The screens are actually fairly close in size. Of course, the UI and how they look is much different. But you have fully digital cluster, fully digital large infotainment up there on the dashboard. But the center console is going to say, I would say, that is the biggest difference between these two, as you have all of your controls for that infotainment system, although it is a touchscreen, is down here in the middle section. You have your gear selection, which is actually quite odd, and I really don't like it here in the CX-90. And then you have the drive mode select, wireless phone charger, two cup holders there on the passenger side, and then you have your two partition center console opening, which is actually very nice, and I do like that design element. But from an overall driver seating position, I have to say I would say this is slightly more relaxed, more car-like than that of the Palisade, where you might feel like you're sitting upright just a little bit more. In terms of the seats, both of them are extremely comfortable, and like I said, do feature the suede Alcantara with the Nappa leather inserts. I do think the seat cushion on the bottom of the CX-90 comes up just a little bit shorter than I would like. You do have the tilt adjustment here on the front of the edge of the seat. It just feels like for some reason the seat bottom is like half an inch to an inch too short in the CX-90, but that's just among first impressions going from one vehicle to the other. But outside of that, the overall seating position here in the CX-90 is fantastic. The dashboard dashboard, although is a little bit high, I would say it does not cause any sorts of visibility issues. I do prefer the seat nearly all the way down in this vehicle, much like most other vehicles that I do drive. But yeah, overall, the front seat of the CX-90 is quite spacious. I would say it is maybe a hair narrower from door panel to center console than that of the Palisade over there, but you do have nice padded inserts on the sides as well as the handle over there. So comfort here in the front seat really has not been an issue, but let's go ahead and hop in the second row and see how it is out back. All right, so jumping in the second row behind my driving position, immediately I can tell there is going to be a stage seating effect here for second row occupants. So you are sitting up just a little bit higher than those in front of you. The door opening is extremely wide, as you can see, probably like 75 degree angle. All the materials on the doors, seats, and the center console area do follow through from the front, which is fantastic and kind of expected in this price point and category. Overall, you know, this is a very nice place to be. I have plenty of legroom, plenty of footroom, and plenty of headroom. You do have heated and ventilated second row seats with the automatic tri-zone climate for rear occupants, USB charging, AC vents. Now this one is the 6-passenger configuration. Believe it or not, you can get the CX-90 in a 6, 7, or 8-passenger, depending on the drivetrain and trim that you choose. So this one is the 6-passenger, which means 2 in the third row, 2 in the second row, and of course 2 up front. That means you get the center console between the second row captain's chairs, which actually follows the exact design language of that of the front, with the same armrest materials and design and the split folding and opening design, 2 cup holders. You have a storage tray at the bottom of the center console, which is extremely nice for hiding smaller items or just having a little bit of additional security, even though it doesn't lock or anything. But yeah, here in the second row, you're gonna be very, very comfortable. I think no matter what driver or passengers in front of you, you have plenty of space. And of course, the seats do fully adjust, slide back and forth, and have the recline here on the left side of the seat. I will say it doesn't recline quite as far as the Palisade, but plenty enough to get comfortable on those longer road trips. So really the second row seats are very, very nice, but the third row is where it starts to get a little bit uncomfortable or a little bit smaller here in this particular vehicle. So entering the third row is done via the manual levers here on the top sides of the seats. That is one other difference that you'll notice from the Palisade, which actually has electronic releases. But overall, the door opening or the available space to get into the third row is fairly small in both vehicles, but I would say it is just a touch smaller here in the CX-90. So stepping inside, you can see you do have to get up quite a bit, lift your leg up, and then you flop down here in the third row, pull the seat back. It does lock into a somewhat forward position, which is nice. And immediately I can tell I am not too comfortable back here. My feet are fairly cramped underneath the seat, and my legs and knees are up very, very high, close to my chest, so that is not a very comfortable thing. What's interesting is you do have AC vents for third row occupants, but it's all the way down here underneath the cup holders on the sides of the plastic, which is an interesting location. So that is kind of blowing up, maybe potentially blocked by your thigh and leg in that area. You do have USB-C charging, which is the exact same as the Palisade. Speakers up here in the far back pillars. Headroom is actually very, very good inside this vehicle, all the way back here. But again, it kind of should be given the overall station wagon roof line. So I would say have 1.5 inches back here, which is actually quite good. The seating materials do not follow through from the second row, so you have full Napa leather seats with the black accents. The headrests do fold down if you want them to, or you can go ahead and put them up like that when in use. But yeah, in terms of amenities, like I said, you don't have any power folding seats at all for second or third row, unlike the Palisades, which gives you standard power folding second row seats, and then you do get the power folding third row and the limited as well as the calligraphy. So that is definitely a drawback of the CX-90, but in terms of comfort and seating position, I would say it is going to be tight in the third row if you plan on using it. But second row occupants certainly do have the benefit of all that additional space and amenities. All right, so stepping here into the front seat of the Hyundai Palisade Calligraphy Night Edition. Immediately I have to say the seats are going to be a little bit on the softer side, so there's a little bit extra give and extra cushion. You have very similar Napa seating surfaces with the Alcantara inserts, all leather stitched on the door panel, some shiny gloss black materials for the dashboard and stuff. But Overall, this is a extremely nice interior for the price differential versus that CX-90 over there. But like I mentioned in that vehicle, you're going to feel like you're sitting a little bit more upright in this vehicle and a little bit closer to the engine or the front axle, given the overall, drivetrain layout. This one is a front-wheel drive based platform. That one is a rear-wheel drive based platform, which creates a different driving experience among the powertrains that are in each of them too. But in terms of overall materials, feature amenities, and stuff like that, it's very, very similar, although you do see a few more hard touch, kind of, I would say, lesser quality materials here in the Palisade, but again, that is kind of to be expected. You have all of your nice, power mirror, window controls, memory seats over there on the driver's side. Same leather-wrapped steering wheel, kind of the two-tone effect of that one. The silver accents for the audio multimedia driver assistance technologies. You have very similar size, fully digital cluster and infotainment systems up there on the dashboard. You have mainly hard touch controls here for the climate and media. Ventilated and heated front seats with your heated steering wheel, of course. Drivetrain select, and then you have a small touchscreen here in the calligraphy for the dual zone, or I should say tri-zone automatic climate control, because it does have a rear zone for rear occupants as well, which you can control via that small screen. So really, other than the center console dashboard layout, it's not all that different. And then of course the seating position, like I mentioned here in the front. And speaking of the seating position, this does have more adjustments, believe it or not, than that CX-90. So you have adjustable four-way power lumbar, but you also have the air bladders in the sides of the bolsters, so you can tighten and loosen those as you see wish via this knob on the side. So basically just an additional level of comfort. And then you do have the power adjusting leg extension on the outside among the Ergo Motion driver seat. So this does have a massaging driver seat, unfortunately not a massaging passenger seat, but overall adjustments to get comfortable in the Palisade, I would say, is even better than that of that fully loaded CX-90 over there. But I would say that one is just a little bit more relaxed, maybe sedan-like, if you will, where this one is just a little bit more upright, a little bit more commanding over the road, and feature amenities and stuff like that isn't really all that different, but you do have a few more adjustments here on the driver's seat. But let's go ahead and hop in the second and third rows here in the Palisade and see what space and features are like back there. So stepping into the Palisade Calligraphy Night Edition behind my approximate driving position. Well, for one, you can tell there's going to be more space in this vehicle, partially due to the fact that there's no center console between the second row captain's chairs, so that frees up the entire center portion, but it just feels like there's more open space here in front of you as well. I have plenty of room, as you can see, behind the seat. The door opening does not open quite as far, so that is a small note. If you use the door opening or have car seats or something like that, I would say it opens 80% as far as that one over there, so you do have a little bit more, or I should say less opening here to get in and out of the vehicle, but materials do follow through from the front with all of that Napa leather and stitching on the door with all the soft touch materials. Seating surfaces do follow through as well. You have a little bit of a stage seating effect, but I would say it's slightly less noticeable in this vehicle than it was in that, so you might not sit quite as much higher up over that of the front two seats, but you are certainly a little bit higher. You do have heated and ventilated second row seats with an automatic zone for the climate control. You have an integrated 150 watt, 120 volt wall outlet here in the back, which is not found in the CX-90 over there, but you do have one in the trunk of that vehicle, so kind of a trade-off. Headroom's very good. Adjustments as far as the seat goes, you still have the levers to slide the seat forward and backward. I will say there's a little bit greater range of motion, it feels like. Reclining is also going to be a greater range of motion. I can see you go way back in terms of the recline, so that is very nice. And you do have the power folding functionality once we get to the hatch and trunk area, or ingress into the third row as well, which we'll showcase in a second. But yeah, in terms of overall space, feels like there's a little bit more here in the Palisade. Comfort isn't all that different between them. I would say it's very comparable, but that center console is nice in the CX-90, but you do have the armrests, which are adjustable in this vehicle. So really not a huge trade-off in that regard, and all the features are going to be mostly the same between them. So let's go ahead and hop in the third row of the Palisade, see what space is like back there, and then we'll go ahead and wrap up this video with some of the trunk area. So one nice thing about the Palisades in, I believe, most of the trim levels, if not standard equipment, is the fact that you have the power release second row seats, both on this button down there, as well as one up near the top. So it's simply a one-touch function to get in and out of the third row. Seat slides most of the way forward. You can move it just a little bit more. And I would say you have a little bit easier of a time and a little bit more room to get in the third row here in the Palisade over that CX-90. So let's go ahead and hop back there. Oh yeah, much easier to get in the third row here in the Palisade. Then of course you can bring the seat back, clicks into a more forward position so you're not cramped immediately. But I will say my knees are still fairly upright, and I have a similar amount of room behind the second row seats, although they might have additional room up front, which was not found in the CX-90. Now the big difference here in the Palisade is the seat materials actually do fall throughout the rest of the vehicle. So these are going to be the suede Alcantara versus the Napa leather like the CX-90. You have power folding or reclining seats on the adjustments. You have heated outboard seats as well as USB-C charging. So much more luxurious and feature packed here in the third row versus the Mazda over there. So you can simply touch these buttons and it will recline the third row seats quite a lot actually, and also power fold them from the trunk area, which we will get into in a second. So the amount of features that you have in this vehicle is quite crazy, again, considering the price point. In terms of overall headroom, I would say I have slightly less here in the Palisade. Actually, I would say it's quite comparable at right around 1 inch, so really not very different. This is the suede headliner, which I really do enjoy in the calligraphy models. You still have speakers back here. AC vents are located up on the roof instead of down by your knee area. And you still have cup holders and all the usual stuff as far as that goes. So yeah, much more luxurious here in the third row of the Palisade. And again, all of these features and amenities are found on the limited trim as well. All right, so starting with the Mazda for available space behind the third rows. So you can see there's actually a very usable amount of space. I actually put a fairly large cooler back here just the other day, and it fit fine with several inches to spare between the tailgate and the seat backs. On the right or passenger side, you do have the 120 volt, 150 watt wall outlet that is actually located in the center console in the second row over there in the Palisade, as well as a 12 volt outlet. So good amount of power here in the back. LED lighting here on the left side with a little bit of pocket, and then there is an LED light up here on the tailgate as well. Underneath the floor, you'll actually find very little space. You have some of your roadside toolkits, a little bit of additional storage space, and then your temporary spare tire is located beneath this plastic insert, which you do pull up. And there you'll find the subwoofer for the premium audio, as well as that temporary spare tire. And there is a little bit of additional storage space beneath the floor as well. Now, something you'll immediately notice that you're missing back here is any sort of power functions for the seats. So yes, you have all manual controls for folding down the seats. Now, this is not a hard thing to do at all. You simply pull down this lever, it folds the headrest, and you give it a push, falls right down. Again, not a hard thing to do, but when you're spending this amount of money, $60,000, I would probably expect some power folding and adjustments here in the CX-90. And if you want to fold down the second row seats, well, you do have to go around each side of the vehicle and do those individually. But yeah, that is just something to note. And I guess looking at the backs of the seats, you actually only have leather on the second two seats. So if you're actually folding those flat, just note you don't have the same protective carpet materials that you do here in the back as far as the third rows go. So it definitely seems to me that Mazda designed this vehicle around being a four-seater with additional capacity for those two occupants in the back if needed in a pinch, but mainly for additional storage space in addition to seating four people extremely comfortably. All right, so moving on to the Palisade. All right, immediately upon first impressions, very similar space here behind the third row, although you do have to remember these do have the recline function. So if you have them reclined all the way like this one is over here, certainly less space the farther you go up, and I don't think you could fit up that same cooler that I had in the CX-90 behind the third row unless they're all the way in their upright position like this side is right here. But like I said, in terms of amenities, you have much more in the Palisade. Now, these are all located here on the driver's side. So over here, you have a 12 volt outlet. Unfortunately, your 120 volt outlet's located up there in the middle of the vehicle. You have the subwoofer for the Harman Kardon premium audio. The power folding second row and the power fold up down third row seats are all located in the switches right there. So very nice to see that. Simply one touch function. You do have tons of additional storage space. So you can see the cargo retractable cover is in here right now, so you can stow that up there or have it up when the seats are in their folded section. Some additional accessories and stuff like that, but really a lot of additional underfloor storage in this vehicle. And if you're looking for the temporary spare tire, well, that is actually going to be located here underneath the vehicle itself. You can see it is hanging up there. So that might be a small drawback to some people, is that the spare is exposed underneath the vehicle, but that does net you additional storage space underneath the floor that you clearly do not have over there in the CX-90. So yeah, overall very different in terms of features back here. And another item I do want to point out that I found over there in the Mazda is that the second row here in the Palisade does have the more durable protective carpeting on the backs of the seats, so it's not a leather material. So if you do fold those flat via these buttons or over there up in front of the vehicle, that is a difference, that you have that protective carpet. Again, much more durable over time if you are frequently hauling longer items inside the vehicle, or ones that might be dirty or something like that. But overall size is very similar, but you have a lot more amenities here in the Hyundai, which is actually substantially cheaper. So when it comes to the powertrains between each of these two, this is also going to be a key difference, not only in terms of the platform which they are based upon, but also what powers these two as well. So starting out with the Palisade, under the hood you're going to find a 3.8 liter naturally aspirated V6 engine, which pushes out 291 horsepower and 262 pound-feet of torque through an 8-speed automatic transmission and a front-wheel drive based all-wheel drive system. Now the Mazda, on the other hand, uses a 3.3 liter turbocharged inline 6-cylinder, and here in the Turbo and Turbo S models, a 48-volt mild hybrid system as well. This combination has a few different total output figures based on not only the octane you use, but also the version and the trim level. But in its most powerful version, as seen here, it puts out 340 horsepower and 369 pound-feet of torque using premium fuel, and power is sent through a rear-wheel drive based all-wheel drive system and also an 8-speed automatic transmission. So to wrap up this video, I'll give you my final thoughts and recommendations on which one might be a better fit for you depending on your use case. I've had a lot of time to think about this, so let's go ahead and dive right in. So the first thing that comes to mind is the use case in terms of a family situation where you have, 1, 2, maybe 3 children or more, and you're using this kind of mid-size 3-row SUV for a family hauler. I would say the best choice out of these two is going to be the Palisade for a couple of reasons. So the reason I would say the Palisade may be a slightly better vehicle for this use case is going to be the interior space is just a little bit bigger in all aspects. I would say the ingress and egress is better for all seating positions as well, including that third row. And I would say it even has better feature amenities and overall creature comforts versus the fully loaded CX-90 in terms of safety, driver assistance, and even some comfort items such as the massaging driver's seat and of course all of the power folding second and third row seats out back. Now, speaking of those second and third row seats, I think this is a very key feature to have the power folding and all that functionality in the back, because not only can you control it on the infotainment system, but you can also control it via the one-touch release on the second row seats and of course those buttons in the trunk areas as well. I just think, overall that is something that really should be standard equipment or found on a very, very low trim level on most of these vehicles these days, for just ease of use. And the fact that the Mazda has manual controlled, folding seats and the releases to get into the third row and stuff like that really does not lend itself to being a premium vehicle, which it is really priced at and targeted towards. But I just think as a family hauler, it's just easier for kids, children, older adults to push one button, the seat kind of automatically retracts or springs forward, and you can gain access to the third row, or similarly just push one button and have the third row seats fold down for additional cargo hauling capabilities. So I think those are just a few reasons why the Palisade is probably going to be a slightly better family hauler, especially if you're using the second and third row seats often. Now moving over to the Mazda, while it certainly has a more sporty character and dynamic to it in the way it drives and also its powertrain with that inline turbocharged 6-cylinder and the mild hybrid boost functionality. So if you desire a little bit more of a sporty edge and driving dynamic, I would say the Mazda is certainly the way to go, as it has the rear-wheel drive based architecture. The inline turbocharged 6-cylinder is very peppy, for a vehicle, in this category. I know it's not a full-on sports machine, and there are some more aggressive sport offerings in the midsize three-row segment, but I think the Mazda certainly drives very nice. It has some very good interior materials, borderline luxury class, I would say. Both of these two are very, very good options, but the Mazda with the color combinations, the Napa seating surfaces, all the amenities on the door panel and dash, I think really lend it to be borderline luxury, kind of like it is priced. So overall, I think from an amenity and material standpoint, both of them are going to be great options, but the Mazda certainly has a more sporty character. Now, in terms of both of these vehicles, the interior materials, the feature set, as well as the overall aesthetics are going to be very good. Very easy to use on a daily basis. I really do like the Mazda's color combinations and configurations you can get with the interior and exterior colors. I think the white with the brown Napa really stood out, and really wish Hyundai would offer some of these similar color combinations on some of their future vehicles, which hopefully they are coming in the future. I did like the 6-passenger configuration of the CX-90, but I will say if you're using it again for family, kids, hauling, that center console in the second row is probably not the most ideal situation, but I really do like the overall flow from Mazda, considering that the front console and the second row console pretty much match each other. I would just probably choose a different trim level in the CX-90 to get rid of that second row console if you are going to choose that vehicle to do family activities and do a lot of hauling in terms of people or cargo. So that's pretty much going to do it for my overall thoughts and impressions here on the Hyundai Palisade Calligraphy Night Edition versus the Mazda CX-90 Turbo S Premium Plus. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video and or found something helpful. If you did, make sure to hit that like button below. It greatly helps out the channel, these videos. Subscribe if you haven't already. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comment section below, and also make sure to check out some other content I have here on the channel, not only the Palisade and the CX-90, but other makes and models as well. Now, with all that being said, let me know your thoughts and your pick between each of these two vehicles down in the comment section below. There is a fairly hefty price difference between each of these, with the Calligraphy Night Edition coming in, right around the $54,000 to $55,000, where the Mazda CX-90 Turbo S Premium Plus, as seen in this video, was just over $61,000. So, with a, $5, $6, maybe $6,500 price difference between each of them, I think there is a very, very big value proposition leaning towards the Palisade Calligraphy or the Calligraphy Night Edition versus those fully loaded Mazdas. But again, the Mazda does offer some, key differences in terms of the way it drives the powertrain, fuel efficiency, stuff like that, where the Palisade just, lacks in that department. But, is that $6,000 or roughly $6,000 price difference worth it to you? Let me know all that down in the comment section below. As always, I appreciate the support here on the channel, and hope to see you guys in the next one.